All right, Joe. All you got to do is say welcome back to the Day After podcast, and we'll be going from there, and then I'll say my bit.
I just gotta say, welcome back to the podcast.
That's literally the easiest one.
Okay. Welcome
Welcome.
back to another episode of the Day After podcast.
Yeah, we just it is interesting. It is Survivor 44. Sorry for the delay. Weather has been crazy in California.
Mhm.
Snowstorm up where Joe is. For
Yeah,
us, it was pouring down rain a few nights, like on Friday. Like I know a friend where her place got flooded a little bit.
yeah. I
Nothing
heard
like
that there's even
major.
some snow in North Hollywood, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
And then, I went to Griffith Park and some big trees were uprooted. And like one just defied gravity too, because like it was a tree on a slope and it fell this way, didn't fall down. It fell
Mhm.
this way and scraped this person's house.
Dang. Yeah, the power lines around my house, trees had fallen on them, and so that's what kept me from having power and internet. But we finally got it. We're finally able to talk about this episode, and man, what a chaotic first episode of
Oh,
Survivor! Like this might be
yeah,
one of the most chaotic episodes in a very, very long time, if not ever.
yeah. I can't tell you. We can start from the beginning, but like just from beginning to end, there was just so many like surprises and first and so many like it was a crazy episode. And like it was topped off by one of the craziest tribal councils in Survivor history. Um, but yeah, I do want to say right off the bat, because there's a couple things.
Mhm.
I know during our draft, I gave you a lot of crap for choosing so many from one team when I did the exact same thing. However, one of them one of them was like the last choice I could make. So
Mhm.
to amend my to amend what I was like, busting your guts
Yeah,
about,
well, if I choose all from one group, then that means that you're probably going to get a lot of people from another tribe just by how
that's
numbers
fair.
pan out. Um,
Al-
but
Also,
I when I drafted, I did it for the memes. Honestly, I just wanted to do it because how funny it is that Gabler, our last pick from last season, wins. Like, so let me inverse my list of who I
I
can
mean,
think can win. And I actually think I have a lot of winner candidates now.
yes, I would say like let's start with the opening shot, which we did a little parody of.
Yeah.
The first thing, and unless it was something very, very serious, Survivor like never breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And in their opening shot, it's just Carolyn just sitting on the beach and then doing a little, like looking around. Is like, all right, what do I say? And then
Yeah.
it
It's
was,
like she doesn't know how to do a confessional. Like it's just completely like a foreign concept to her.
and it's like, I know, like, since we're entertainers or whatnot, we're used to doing it very, very often.
Mhm.
But like the fact that I don't know, it's like you introduce yourself and stuff like that. I don't. It was just kind of funny how like that little exchange happened because
Mhm.
I've been on the producer side of like I'm not necessarily a producer, but like been on the thing where I try to explain something to someone and they just don't get it. I'm just like kind of baffled because I'm like, come on.
But it's just
Uh,
it's so simple. Just it's this. But yeah.
just do what you did in
Carolyn,
your
I'm
audition
telling you
tape.
right now, is potentially the Gabler of the season.
No, I
Like,
think
because
her.
think about it, Gabler's first episode was he seemed so crazy, yet was self-aware of him being perceived this way. And Carolyn has a very similar thing. She's a very crazy person. The audience is going to think she's crazy. The people out there think she's crazy, but she also had some really interesting self-aware moments about how she can't do certain things because she knows that that's going to come off as crazy. So she there are things of her letting us know like she's not doing it all out as much as we might think she is.
which is kind of, we had a little conversation before we started recording. Uh, First off, I'm like, no, if she wins, that is the downfall of Survivor. I'm sorry. I'm sure she's a lovely person, and yeah, I get her backstory and everything. And I think, there is something, admirable about not only um, going through all that drug addiction stuff, but also being in position to help, be so successful with it that you're able to help others and guide them. I know someone in my life who has done something similar. So I
Mhm.
know it's a very tricky thing to do and tricky to maintain, but like, good gosh, like,
She's a
also
lot.
her screams, her like shrill and all that, like in the very first challenge, where she's like trying to get the rings up. I'm like, why didn't they switch anyone else out? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
like,
wonder, are they allowed to switch there, or does she have to keep doing it? Because
people swapped out.
it
Like,
seemed like there was a certain point because she was having fun, and I think at a certain point she realized that it wasn't fun anymore.
yeah.
That's the point you probably let her switch out.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at the rest of the team, I mean, we'll get to the Bruce incident in a little bit, but they're not very, I wouldn't say they're the more muscly of all the tribes. Like,
Yeah, if I had to say, I think that the three tribes are divided up. Ratu is the physical tribe, not very good at puzzles or anything, but they have a lot of big, stronger guys. There's a lot of strong physical competitors. Um, the Tika tribe is the brain intelligence puzzle tribe, but not very good in the muscles. And then what's the other tribe's name?
Green.
Yeah, the Green Tribe. They're like just the all around. They're pretty good at physical stuff. They're pretty good at puzzles. like they're just the all around tribe. So
Yeah,
that's probably how
which
we're gonna see a lot of the challenges go. I'd imagine is
I I
that.
can see the Green tribe not going to tribal
Mhm.
like TBH.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, unless they like throw a challenge because sometimes tribes get bored of not going. But yeah, I could see them pretty much dominating this
Which
pre-merge.
never do, never
Yeah.
do. Uh, never throw, uh, never throw a pre-merge challenge.
Yeah.
But anywho, that aside, but yeah, like, I don't know. It did seem, well, I mean, Bruce was like a big guy and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And I rewatched that scene earlier today. And like, it's crazy how it happened in the sense of like, it's a very like, you see it in like a wide shot where he bumps his head against one of the planks that are out there. And then everything just slows down and the editors like build up that tension and everything. Whereas everyone is still in this challenge and he's just like, you hear the ringing and stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, like, even though I know what is about to happen, I still am like, oh gosh, I was like nervous watching
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Seeing the blood, gushing from the head and him still, having to kind of do the challenge and keep going. It was definitely I mean, that's a scary like day one, like they haven't even really played the game yet. To have
No,
something like that happen is very unfortunate. I have heard that Jeff Probst has actually confirmed Bruce has a guaranteed he can come back and play if he wants
yeah.
like
And
on
I
any
feel,
season. Basically, he just gets to like cut in line of casting and just go straight into the season.
I mean, like, because like we knew going in what was going to happen. And
Hmm.
there was a little bit of it where I was like, all right, are they doing that to kind of like subvert expectations? Because he was good for a while.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but like, going into it, I did really like his backstory. I did like who the guy was.
Hmm.
It was just like we knew going in what was going to happen. And I also saw this little thing online because like obviously they wanted to get, x-rays and see what was going on in his head.
Hmm.
Um, and you know more about Australian Survivor than I do, because like later on when it came to the challenge, Jeff did confirm that he was okay. And someone brought up that, does Australian Survivor use like sick days or something like that? Or it's more so of like, if he did end up okay,
Oh, you got muted.
sorry, mom was calling.
All
Uh,
good.
but if she did, if, but like if he was okay, couldn't he have not come back in? Or does like, you probably have more insight on this since you've seen Australian Survivor.
Well, from rumors of how Australian Survivor works, they're very lenient on how things go. So they probably would have let him go out for a day to get medical stuff. As long as that wouldn't have impacted like a tribal council, they probably would have let him do that. Um, but I know that a lot of Survivor players do criticize Australian Survivor for allowing that kind of stuff because he would basically get like a free day to like be in shelter. He'd probably get
Yeah.
fed out of that. And like Australian Survivor doesn't care about that. They're just like whatever. But in US Survivor, they're very much like you can't have any extra advantage that's outside of the game.
Yeah. I mean, like, I remember reading the article about because I was talking to someone about the typhoon that came in 33,
Mm-hmm.
millennials was Gen X, and I was talking to her and I was like, no, like, the typhoon happened in the very first episode of
Mm-hmm.
that. And then I looked at that article again and like, yeah, like when they like had to evacuate that, like producers were watching them like a hawk, like,
Yeah. Yeah,
no, you're not getting this.
it's intense because they don't want anyone to have any extra advantage by something that happens that's not intended, basically.
Yeah,
So and that they only allow that because everyone had to evacuate. It wasn't like this one tribe has to evacuate. It was
yeah,
all the
exactly.
tribes.
And that was like one of those rare circumstances. But even then, where
Mhm.
everyone technically was getting their same thing, it was like, no, we're still starving you. We're still this. We're still that.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess that does make sense. And I feel like Bruce, he did get the honor of getting to be the first contestant to ever say "Survivor's ready, go," and that was like a really nice moment. Yeah, like Bruce, it was sad because like it was like you knew going in, and like still everything that happened, and then we thought he was okay, and then it was like, okay, maybe that was just not necessarily trailer bait, but like, more so of like, the subversion of expectations. And
Mhm.
then like, later on the night, it just got worse. And then, it was sad to see him go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, he was the last draft pick honor thing. So he definitely goes out, exactly how we imagine it would go, but it was nonetheless never like to see someone go out this early. The first person in Survivor history to be a day one medevac. We've had day two medevacs, day three medevacs, but we've never had a day one medevac yet until now.
Yeah. Um, it was like I said, like, and people have talked about, them doing like another, kind of like similar to what they did in Philippines, but with like day one people, or like I wouldn't say for people that were eliminated first as a result.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I
Yeah. I've also heard 46 is apparently going to be a returnee season. Like they basically said, like, yeah, we are doing a returnee season for that season. So don't know what the theme of that would be, but there's a chance that they also might just bring him back for that one, depending
can
on what
see
the
it.
theme is.
I can see it. I feel like the theme would probably be it would have to be something. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like because there's such like a rich pool this time around, I would love for some of the people that didn't get a chance for, let's say, game changers like 35 through 39 to have like opportunities, because, there was
Yeah.
some good peeps in there that, didn't get the win for Winners at War and whatnot. So to make it back.
Yeah.
But I can
Yeah,
also
I
see
would like to see 35 through 45 kind of being the
the
main pool
pool.
at least.
Yeah. Um, but yeah. Um, but thankfully, at the end of the day, Bruce was fine, and he will be back with
Mhm.
us
Exactly,
in
exactly.
possibly 46.
Yeah, he'll be the second first boot to return if that's the case. So
Yeah, yeah. All right. So other things. So yeah, Green Team pretty much had a dominant, uh, I would say dominant run in both things. Mostly because yeah, it does seem like it's a more well put together tribe.
mhm.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think the Ratu tribe, the orange one, is also pretty well rounded. I would just say
Yeah,
a lot of bad things happened on that tribe.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bad things, but also, I mean, we've seen now them struggle with two different puzzles. They were the worst in the reward puzzle, and they weren't good at this last puzzle. Admittedly, there's other issues with the immunity challenge, like them losing, one of their big physical players. But
For
uh,
a thing where it was pushing and using strength.
yeah,
I I guess we can talk about the breakdown of each tribe and like kind of like tribe dynamics since we're on the orange tribe.
mhm,
Um, but I will say this, like I'm surprised that they targeted Brandon.
yeah, yeah. This is something I just don't understand is taking out your biggest physical asset, even though he got, had went down in that challenge. Like he's clearly still very big and strong and is going to be an asset in these first challenges. You don't take out that person in the first 3 to 4 tribal councils. Like
Yeah,
you let that person try to get you those a few pre-merge wins, and then maybe when you're near the end of the pre-merge, then you can make a move on them if you don't like them.
yeah. I feel especially when this man has given his all in all three challenges,
Yeah,
especially in the, sweater savvy. And even in this one, like the man was like giving hit everything.
yeah.
And yeah, he had an idol, but at the same time, Lauren lied for the first part. She did lie about the advantage. Also, her advantage is a lot more, while it's not an idol, it is definitely something that is very powerful,
Mhm.
especially pre-merge when it's this small, but also like it's
Yeah.
just powerful through and through.
Yeah, if she just works with Jamie in this next vote, or Kane, like suddenly that's 3 out of 5. That's the that's gonna be the vote.
Yeah, and I'm like, I was just like, also I understand maybe wanting to conceal that, but what really did her in was the sit out bench,
Yeah,
the two they were
man,
just like,
imagine
hey,
if Bruce doesn't go out here, that sit out bench doesn't happen. Lauren isn't put into question at all. And Lauren actually gets away with it, but because of that medevac, it actually screws her over.
yeah. I mean, eventually down the line, I'm pretty sure because like
Yeah.
you gotta know that whatever the format is, and people are always asking for proof. It's
Mhm.
like, all right, well, where's the little thing where's the note you got? Like
Yeah.
everyone wants the proof, because it's really hard to fake it. The only time someone tried to fake a note was the shitty pen and paper thing that Dean did in Survivor 39. And like even then it was like they kind of like knew that it was bullshit, but there was like a 2% chance that it was real.
Yeah, well, and I say Dean actually used it, even though it was fake, he used it as like the sense of, hey, I'm using this, so don't vote for me because who knows if it's real. And it just made people not want to make the target him. So he
Yeah.
actually used it in a good way, which I mean, I like to give Dean some credit because I think he doesn't get a lot of credit from that game, but
He doesn't. After my rewatch of that season, I was like, Dean was actually really good.
yeah.
Um, and like but like that's the thing. It was like it was that 2% chance that it was actually real, but that was enough fear, and there was a lot of there was so many other like targets out there that they were like, we just won't get Dean.
Yeah.
But you know, it's something where because now Lauren has this 2 votes, and if this tribe goes again, which I think is possible,
Hmm.
very possible
Yeah.
soon, because all right, because of like another injury that happened, and it's been like 3 days in a row, and each day have like a medical was called, but like also it's like there's also some discordance on this tribe. There is no, like it doesn't feel like a unit right now because of
Yeah.
everything being so fractured.
Yeah, everyone I think played on this tribe very much an individual game in the tribe dynamics, which is something you don't usually see in a first tribal council. Usually everyone's trying to very much try to build connections with everyone, but everyone pretty much went into this tribal council for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, especially, and we saw that earlier on too. I'd say the only one that's really been all about the group and stuff has been Matthew, and even and like I think Matthew, he's a really cool guy and stuff. I don't know how his stock in the game is going to, because they were even considering voting him out because he was like,
Yeah.
hey, this guy, he has a busted up arm, he did something very risky and stuff. It's like, do we really want that around?
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
if they go again, especially next thing, if his arm's not healed, I think he could be in danger.
Yeah,
uh
the reason I'm going purely on edit on why I don't think he's going home is he's been given, I would say, almost MC status in terms of how important that the show is trying to let us know about Matthew, and they
yeah,
wouldn't do that to someone who's about to be as going home episode 2 or 3.
yeah, that is fair. So also, I also have to admit my boo boo. I was totally wrong about the boat thing.
Yeah.
And really clearly because Maddie was the first one voted out.
I
Which I
told you
was kind of like,
when you were like telling me about the theory, I was like, this doesn't even make sense to me. So I don't know
well,
if
no, because like I saw in the trailer and it was like 4 people in the back, and like, yeah, we
yeah.
didn't see the front, but I was like, you know what? Maybe that was their little thing to hide it. Because some
Mhm.
Survivor doesn't always hide it. They're pretty good at hiding things, but I'm like, oh, they slipped up.
Mhm.
I was wrong. And then I was further proven wrong because when I was watching it live, they had a lot of promotions and whatnot, and one of which was Lauren jumping off of something uh, in the current season. Like, it was a wide shot, and like but you can see her, hair and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so, like, when she's going down, diving in, I was like, oh, so she's not going home. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, she's good. Which is crazy because most of the talk was either about Brandon or Lauren. Like that was the big talk, and the only one who even said Maddie at all was Brandon, and it was like a little like side thing. Like I don't trust
yeah.
Maddie.
Well, because like Maddie, when they were looking for the key for the birdcage, idol, when they were doing that, he didn't trust Maddie right off the bat. And then that mistrust was kind of established early on. I'm still wondering why she was the target for
Yeah, I mean, it
Brandon.
was clearly because she saw it with Brandon, and Brandon didn't like their interaction they had, so he suddenly viewed her as the biggest threat on the tribe, and just didn't want to have to deal with that.
Which I'm
It was
like,
it wasn't a tribe decision. As I said, Brandon played his own personal game. It was not about how well it's going to be for the tribe. It was his
I
own personal.
his own personal game. Yes, I
Yeah.
understand that. But at the same time, you have someone that can get 2 votes. And
Yeah.
even pre-merge or later on, an extra vote, tips the scale so much because there's so many different opportunities, not only in pre-merge, but when the tribe split up. at 10 to have two separate tribal councils and stuff, it holds so much weight. So you get rid of that person, especially since it's not an immunity idol.
Yeah, well, they talked about Brandon actually even talked about it a little bit in the episode, and this is why Lauren was my winner pick going into it. Was she's going to be super underestimated, but I thought that she was going to actually be a very dangerous and very good player. Um, I think she revealed her cards early here to let people, but I think that perception was still for so long that she wasn't that they can underestimate her basically. That I think that bled into this decision. Whereas, say they found out about her, yes, on day 2 and then voted on day 3, we might have then seen Lauren go home because it would have been more time to think about it. Whereas that information comes out right, while they're trying to figure out tribal council. Brandon's probably already made up his mind at that point, like, if we go, I want to get rid of Maddie. And now when this information comes up, it's like, oh, that sucks. Like, I gotta focus on her, but I've already got this decision. I've already, and it just wasn't enough time for him to want to make that flip to it, I'd imagine.
Maybe. And another thing that I can see happening as well is like, all right, minor hiccup this episode. Could he possibly, it would be like later on, it was like, Lauren, we're kind of like both kind of threats. Why don't we work together? Because, like,
Mm-hmm.
advantages are a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
but they can't be bartered, and like advantages can get people to want to align with you for a couple reasons. Either one, they use it, or two, puts a target on someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe it's a thing of also I was like, well, maybe we can use that later on. I
Yeah.
don't
There's
know.
actually a lot of ways this tribe goes because the fact that Jamie, Lauren, and Matthew didn't vote means that they didn't have to test their relationships with anyone.
No.
So Brandon doesn't necessarily isn't going to be like, how dare you? Even Kane says in the episode he thinks getting rid of Brandon is too early and didn't want to do it. He just thought that's where the numbers were going, so that's where he was going to vote.
Yeah,
So there's actually, like, it's a weird situation where an idol was played. It seemed like Brandon should have gone home, but everyone is still in a situation where it's like, I maybe Brandon goes for Kane, but if Kane's able to have, like, just I think a good conversation with Brandon and say I didn't want to, Maddie was the one who kind of was getting me in on it.
yeah,
You know, you can maybe still, like, it's still very playable for a lot of people here, I think.
definitely. I will get to Kane in a sec because he is my winner pick. So like he has to make it to jury, um, at least. But I feel like he is in a really good position right now because like his name never came up, or at least that what we saw.
Mhm,
And it did seem like he was in some regards a focal point in the
mhm.
middle. Now that could definitely change by next episode, but I feel like he is someone to definitely keep an eye for. And I feel like it is tough because yes, tribal council does kind of reveal intentions, but because this is the first tribal council in like history where three people willingly sacrifice their vote, literally half the tribe, it does leave this ambiguity going in. And also, like, history is written by those who survive to tell it.
Mhm.
And like, either one of them can be like, oh, well, I thought the votes were on Lauren, or oh, well, I thought the votes were on Brandon. And it could be like, they could be like, oh, we didn't know that the votes were on you. I thought the thing was like to go for Lauren or
Mhm.
Maddie, like we talked about. And, it's one of those things where it's just all kind of like,
Yeah,
it's up in the air. And like, because they didn't have to vote, they can make up any story of like what they want, what narrative they can, because who's to say what they would have done? Only
exactly.
they can.
Yeah, most people go to tribal council for the purpose of trying to figure out where everyone stands in your tribe. And they don't know where people stand in their tribe after this tribal council. There's a lot of ambiguity that is on the table right now. So,
Yeah. Um, which stands to reason because we've never seen the shot in the dark used this way before.
Mhm.
And I know when the yogi, what was her name again?
Jamie.
Jamie, yes. Um, Still learning. Uh, she is on my side, and she did get a nice little edit, but uh, she was the first one to be safe from it. But also, she straight up said, "It was like, you know what? I'm going to play my shot in the dark." And Matt or Matthew was a surprise because I was like, "Wait, what?"
Mhm.
Because but what if you need it later on? But I think it was interesting how the meta kind of shifted in this one, at least for this tribal council, where you can use it to kind of see where the chips lie. Instead,
Mhm.
granted, they weren't targets, or at least they didn't think they were targets, so
Yeah.
it kind of like gave them that play a little bit.
Yeah,
What did
it was a defensive use of the shot in the dark that wasn't meant to necessarily have it work. It was you know, you basically get to just see how a tribal council goes, and then moving forward, then they can make their decision on who they want to, you know, align with. So so yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see if they're gonna, you know, explain that in the next episode. But at least from where I was sitting, that's where I thought at least Matthew's head was at, was using it that way.
Yeah, because with the shot in the dark, up until this point, we have never seen it used successfully. And like, yeah, Jamie was the first one where she got the 1 in 6 chance, but it was kind of like all for naught. I was like,
Yeah.
man,
You almost
Tori
kind
could
of
have
wish that it
survived.
didn't hit just because you want you like I wanted the first time it hit to at least negate votes.
Yeah, but I mean, like it did happen. It was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah.
But up until this point, the shot in the dark, it's like less than 20%. I think like 16% chance of you actually getting immunity, which I mean, if you're back against the wall, 16% is better than 100% guarantee you're going home.
Mhm.
Like, it's like I've seen competitions where that's the only play you can make because if it works, cool beans. If not, and you don't try, well, you have nothing to lose by playing it if your vote doesn't matter and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I don't think I can see this maybe playing out maybe at merges a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but at the same time, I think it is very risky, and this is one of the few circumstances where it kind of paid off.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely. So yeah, that's the Orange Tribe. I think definitely a fun tribe. Let's talk a little bit about the Tika tribe, the Purple tribe, because I think we have three big characters on this tribe that I'm really excited to see. You know, them continue playing, and that's for me. That's Carolyn Carson, and I found out his name is Jam Jam.
Jam Jam.
Yeah,
Uh, it's one of those things where it's like it I think it could be partially accent based, why it's like that, but
yeah.
also like
Yeah, I mean, I heard like Yam Yam a few times, and then I heard Jeff say Jam Jam, and then I
yeah,
listened to a podcast, and then so they also were saying like it is Jam Jam. So I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna try to say it
Try
like
and
that,
keep
I
saying
guess.
Jam Jam.
It's a
Um,
similar Omer situation, where we're thinking it's Omar, and then it's Omer.
yeah. It'll take a little bit to get used to, but either way, it's a fun name. Uh, but yeah, Jam Jam, very, very fun energy going out. He got his little. They also named the episode after his quote. It was like, "I'm so excited to see Jeff. I'm ready to not eat to go number 2 in the ocean." Ah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think he had a great episode. I think
yeah,
he's his whole story I think is being set up pretty well right now. I could see him having a similar story arc almost to like a Marianne almost of being this fun character who seems like he's out there to, you know, experience Survivor and have a good time, and maybe people actually don't look at him as a strategic threat for so long because of that. And you know, he I could see him making like those big moves near the end that shifted over to into his favor. So And yeah, he had 7 confessionals, which was a pretty good confessional count here for someone to potentially win. Not too much, not too small. Um, yeah, and I think he just had a lot of great content overall. Like he didn't have any negative content. He didn't have anything that made you go like, ooh, that person can't win because they did this or they weren't talking about this or whatever.
Yeah. I feel I don't even really think this tribe was very that negative, just in general. Granted, most of the focus when it came to the Tika tribe was Bruce, and then also like doing the Savvy challenge, and
Mhm.
like basically that was kind of like the main takeaway from Tika this episode. And like, getting to know some of the people like Carson, who he I think he's a really good player, but that's the thing that kind of worries me about like in his position, it was like, yes, he is probably one of the best prepared out there. However, that's why I didn't know where to place him because I'm like, I can kind of see him getting targeted early, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I can see him get far because like he's one of the more obvious choices when it comes to a threat. And he even wanted to like lower his equity, being like, oh, I don't know if I can do the savvy puzzle and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a good option. I think if
Yeah,
he stepped up and was like, "I got this," I think that would have potentially sealed his fate, honestly, of being viewed as the a confident brainiac who's good with puzzles and everything. But by kind of playing it down and almost letting Helen kind of take the lead a little bit and
yeah,
kind of just being there to make sure everything's kind of going right. I think that was a better role for him with his kind of archetype and play style that he is going to be doing.
yeah. I mean, like he's familiar with a lot of the survival puzzles and stuff like that, even creating his own models, which
Yeah.
props to him for A, having a 3D printer, and B, just like, you know, just making the challenges and whatnot, for him
Mhm.
to like, test and demo. Um, I feel like if those certain challenges come up, and like, because there comes a certain point where it's like, oh, threat equity. If you're practicing the challenges, you have an intent to win those challenges, and if you win those challenges, then your threat equity goes up. So it's like, it's very, very. That's what I'm saying. It's very, very tricky to place him. I think he's definitely going to be a very important person.
Mhm.
Um, but whether or not he's like a late pre-merge boot, or he's the mergatory boot or something like that, is
Yeah.
still yet to be seen,
Yeah.
obviously, but like,
Yeah. Or
I don't know.
maybe even the Jesse Lopez, Omer Zahir kind of like late game kind of
Yeah,
threats that they have to like the winner ends up having to take out.
yeah, I can see that too. I would say he definitely, that's why he was the big question mark, and I feel like this episode definitely confirms it a bit more. Like, um I think he's cool. Fun fact, a guy I know named Omar, not Omer,
Mhm.
who watches all the CBS reality shows, he knows a friend who's friends with Carson.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was kind of interesting. You and I were talking a little bit about the episode. Um, Now, and we kind of touched on this person a little bit, but I mean, with Carolyn, and we even saw in the trailer on the next time that she was getting on people's nerves.
Mhm.
Um, she is very much a Nora, and she's aware, but it's like, okay, I understand that, but if you keep, but it's the things that are falling through the cracks and whatnot, and especially when this tribe has a lot of like strong people, and Carolyn, I don't know what she brings to the table.
Yeah, she's definitely and this is what's weird because I think like I think that they've set her up in a way where it would be weird for her to go out soon, but also if they lose the immunity challenge, I mean, I guess Sarah doesn't have her vote at the next tribal council, so maybe there can be a move that happens against Sarah. But
Maybe.
like Carolyn does seem like the obvious like throw them to the side person on this tribe.
Well, I mean, like, I understand taking out threats is very, very important in this game, obviously, but it's always risky, especially since Modern Survivor does not have tribe swaps. So, like, anytime you have to go to tribal council, and we saw this with NECA last season, where it's
I,
like,
I will say I have heard a rumor that tribe swaps might be in the season. I have no idea if that's even
like it's a rumor. It
yeah,
definitely could happen, but we're just basing it off what we've seen so far. So if I
yeah.
were going out in 44 or even 43, I would assume not. So like assuming that they're assuming, and yes, I could be making an ass out of you and me, that there is
Taking me
no
down with you,
tribes,
I see.
uh, that there is not going to be a tribe swap
Mhm.
because I feel like they would think so. They could be like, well, if we have to keep going back, then we're going to like, you can only bring, yeah, you can take out threats, but sometimes people are threats because they're useful.
Mhm.
Um, like Brandon. Uh,
Yeah, Brandon is a useful threat. He's someone you don't want to get to the end necessarily with, but not now. You don't
no, no, no,
use him
no.
now. Use him for like 14 days and then get rid of him.
Exactly. But I don't know. I'm like, that's why I'm like, also, we didn't really get too much strategy talk on this tribe, really.
Mhm.
And I don't
Yeah,
remember
the
too
only
much.
real strategy was Carson, Helen, and Sarah wanting to be a threesome there, and which will be the numbers. But the thing is, Sarah doesn't have her vote, so it's technically not really the numbers. But so that's kind of it. And then Carolyn, wanting to kind of be in with the group, but also having some self awareness, know that she can't just be hovering over everyone and trying to get in that way. So uh, I am saying I think if there's a chance we get another Gabler-esque win here with Carolyn.
But just please no. Please no.
uh,
I mean,
okay.
like, it is interesting. Don't get me wrong. I'm obviously not saying it won't happen. Clearly, there's part of me that's afraid that it might.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. She could turn, she can come around on me. She could, like, yeah, my mind can be changed.
Yeah.
There's
Maybe
only like,
maybe she just starts playing like a crazy good game at like final eight or something to the end, and who knows.
who knows?
But from what we're getting the crazy character who somehow kind of knows that they're perceived this way and trying to do things to counterbalance it, but because they're just such a crazy kooky character, they're
Yeah,
the audience doesn't really buy what they're selling.
it's tough to say. And I think with the Gabler thing, I'm still like processing that because like I look back at 43 and I'm like, it was a good season,
Yeah.
but I wasn't satisfied with the ending.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I said, like, I think a lot of the season was actually better than 42, but the ending of 42 was significantly better than the ending
Yeah,
of 43. And I think that does, it basically dropped 43 a little bit further than 42.
yeah, I agree. But I don't know. It's she has a 1 in, well, now 16 chance of it possibly being her.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll see. We'll see. If she's someone to root against in some regards. I'm sorry if you watch this. I'm sure I'm sure you're awesome. And I'm like I said in the beginning, but like just no. All right. But last but certainly not least, we got to go over the Green Tribe. And there's something interesting And I'm pretty sure you've heard the either the rumors slash reports and whatnot about a showman's.
Yes, yeah. It's definitely looking like we're getting the Franny Matt
Yes.
relationship. That's what it seems like it's heading towards.
Did you notice? Because I noticed this when I rewatched this morning, that when Matt was talking, first thing he talked about was his breakup.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the shots afterwards, when it was like the tribe going up, Franny was kind of like the focal point of it,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
which
I
I was
noticed that.
like,
I also noticed early on in the episode when they were doing like the cuts to all the different survivors in the beginning, it actually starts with Franny saying something and Matt finishing her sentence.
yes. I'm like, you know what? And me being a nerd, I'm like, hell yeah, nerdy showmans. Like, yes,
Hmm.
like, yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, and you can even look at the confessionals here. They basically gave all the screen time for this tribe to Franny and Matt. Like they were, they were the focal point of this tribe. If we
Yeah,
saw this tribe, it was about them.
yeah. And like Matt, granted, he also went to he went to the special island and
Yeah.
whatnot. We can get to that in a little bit, but like um I will say that after watching Franny play, my stock on her did raise up a little bit.
Hmm.
um but yeah, I feel like this tribe, like we already said, this tribe is probably the most cohesive. I'd be surprised if this tribe doesn't go to tribal council because they seem the best rounded, and that's what you need in
Yeah,
one of these
yeah.
things.
Yeah, I'm guessing they either all make it or maybe one person, one tribal council or something like that. But I think that this will probably be the majority for the tribal division, assuming there's no tribe swaps. I mean, as I said, there's that rumor, but if we're not taking that into account, yeah, this is definitely going to be the tribe to look out for.
Yeah. Speaking of which, and it is a little unfortunate we spend so much time on the others, but like they, other than like Matt, we didn't really get too much screen time in that
Mhm.
regard. But if we're looking at the island challenge, where it was like, oh, I will say it was kind of like interesting because when they all went off, first off, and this was interesting this season, we didn't get like the heartfelt background of people.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
I'm guessing that I wonder if after the 43 backlash of everyone basically groaning after every person getting the backstory, if they said, you know what, let's take out a bunch of the stuff and put in a lot more not that.
yeah. And usually during this time, we saw like a little something or people talking and whatnot. And it like I kind of blinked and then was like, oh, wait, they're already at the decision.
Yeah,
Um, and this being very, very important too, because it's like, oh, you must draw, you have
yeah.
to risk.
Yeah, I love this way more because it's also not about the other players. All three of them are playing for on their own individual terms. They each have their own risk that they're doing, their own advantage that they could be getting. They're different advantages too. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like only an extra votes. It was a lot of different ways to who knows what you're getting basically.
Yeah. And we saw the one where it's like the inheritance one. And that's a little interesting. Because it's like you have to play it beforehand, if I'm correct, and any like advantage and whatnot being played.
I think the inheritance is so you can play. So if you see people playing idols and advantages, you can wait till all that's done and then play it and then receive all the advantages from that tribal council. So it doesn't have to be before.
I feel like that's risky though, because like let's say we got a obviously not a we got one where it's multiple things being played. If you have to publicly be like, hey, I want this, I feel like it's something where it's like, oh, that puts like a huge target. Granted, let's say if you're at if you play something like that at 7 and 2 idols are played, then 6-5, you're guaranteed to final four if you're able to get that, if there is no nullifiers around.
Yeah, but imagine if you played Inheritance and now suddenly no one's wanting to play their advantages because now they know that you played this. So you could just waste it if you do it that way. Um, so you kind of need to make sure that you're getting something out of it
Yeah.
in order for it to make sense for you. My question is, I don't know if you're allowed to play the inheritance advantage, get the advantage, and then immediately play it on yourself. I'm not sure if how that would.
Like as in like doing a loop. Oh, like
So
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 like oh if
whoever
you played
so
an
if someone
idol,
plays the idol, they are safe. They have played the idol. That means that they're not taking that person's idol away from them because they still have that power. They still did it, but now
yeah,
the inheritance allows them to basically take the power, and now then they can also have it. But even though it's already been used, it can now be used again by them.
it's like that would be something interesting. I
Yeah,
feel like maybe that list of rules they usually get probably says,
yeah,
and then we
yeah.
might find out later on if that scenario comes up.
Yeah, I had like a lot of question marks about that advantage because it seemed like it seemed like a convoluted thing that they tried to tell you in like a few, in like a log line basically in just a little sentence, but it's like there's a lot of different scenarios of how that can go down, and we just kind of don't know that yet.
Just imagine you play it where there's an idol nullifier and an idol, and it's just like, ooh, you get both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bunch of things can get played, and I wonder if shot in the darks also counts. Can you just get like a bunch of shot in the darks?
I think this is some. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, can you play multiple shot in the darks at once if you were so in that position
Yeah,
too?
exactly. Six people play shot in the darks. Okay, I'm guaranteed to be safe.
Uh, I don't know. Like, there's always this possibility. There are these scenarios that could play out, and we'll find out later on in the future. Granted, the person also has to survive their next tribal council,
Yeah,
and
and
like,
she doesn't have a vote for one more tribal council, so it is actually very possible that she gets targeted because of Carolyn and Jam Jam seem to be into a nice it seems like they're bonding a little more, and then that means that Sarah's gonna have to rely on Helen and Carson to go to bat for her, which I mean that I don't think Carson's willing to go to rocks for her.
I mean, like the thing is, you just recruit Yam Yam, for now, and then like bye Felicia. The next thing, like if that's the strategy you want, like make Yam Yam think he's part of a four.
Mhm.
And then like, even have a fake alliance, have that ambiguity where like, oh, well, maybe we do want Yam Yam. Maybe we're getting closer and maybe Sarah's advantage kind of scares me.
Mhm.
Let's get rid of her.
Now, what happens if Carolyn finds the key and gets the idol cage?
I know you're saying this to mess with me. Uh, it is possible. It is
Yeah, she's like
possible.
gonna go looking for rocks to rub on her body, and then suddenly she's like, "What is this?"
Maybe, maybe. I don't know. Plus, it's all the other opportunities that people might go on this island and what they may get.
Mhm.
Um, Sarah did lie a little bit, where she was like, "Oh, we'll find out. We'll
Yeah.
find out." Um, Matt, very candid. He was like, "Yeah, I can't vote for the next two ones. Sorry."
Yeah, well, he didn't say the next two ones. He only did one, and then when Josh tried to say about a second, like, did you go again? Matt said, "No, I didn't. This is the one." So
Yeah,
he told 90% of the truth.
yeah. I remember that.
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, that's that there. We never talked about the sweat and savvy too much. We kind of like I
Touched on
think
him.
brush on it, but didn't really go into any details on it. Um, so I think that this was also a better version of the Sweat and Savvy that we have seen. I think this is yet again an improvement on the thing. The fact that that opening reward challenge, both versions have to be done. Second place gets to choose, and then the other
Yeah.
tribe has to take the other one basically. I thought that was really good. And I do think typically Sweat is going to be looked at as the safe option, like, you know, because with a puzzle, there's, you know, a lot more variables and ways for it to fail, whereas Sweat is like, you just got to do it, you just got to, you know, put
Yeah.
your nose down and do it.
And the thing is with the puzzle and what there is, like there are different types of puzzles. Last season, it was a brain teaser with numbers. This time it was like, you know, an optical thing, where it's like
Mhm.
how many rings are here. Um and like this time around with the sweat, you know, like this one on the surface doesn't seem that bad, but when you stop to think about it, it's like, huh. But I feel like if you have strong people and you know you can be able to do that one, then you might as well, because like you don't necessarily fail, quote unquote, by not being able, like yeah, you get like it essentially it's like you have time to like, you know, think and pace and stuff, and like when you have like 15 minutes to come up with a brain teaser, you only get one shot.
Mhm.
You know, it's a bit different to figure out, in the sense of
Yeah.
like, all right,
Yeah,
the
and it
sweat
was
is a
less
bit more
time than
playable.
normal. I think before it's been a half an hour to do it, or maybe not even a time. I think it was just like choose you have until you decide to choose your answer or whatever. But this one definitely had a time limit, which definitely makes it a lot more stressful to like,
Yeah,
you know, be able to work under those conditions.
it can yeah, when you have that time limit, and or like, you know, that hourglass, it does make people be like, uh-oh. Stuff like that can make
Yeah.
people make rash decisions.
Yeah, I just wanted them to fail though, and then them smash the hourglass and be like, "I'm reversing the challenge."
If one of us goes out there, we need to do that.
I know, right? If we ever get that opportunity, it's I'm smashing that hourglass.
Um, yeah. Also, speaking of which, I have an announcement. No, 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 I'm playing.
I was gonna say, geez.
But it was interesting how Carson in his little intro thing was like, he said the specific date that was confirmed in casting. Like, that's interesting. Okay, so if I don't hear anything by this certain point, I guess I'm not in the running at all. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much yeah, it's nice. I think he did that probably on purpose to let people know like when casting is like, you know, really
wink, wink.
making their decisions.
Well, I mean, like, it's not like that stuff is completely taboo to say.
Mhm.
Like, you know, something happened where it was like, oh, like, you know that most of the casting is done in like February, or at least
Mhm.
like that's when they kind of like reach out a lot. So,
Yeah.
or did you get anything?
Nope, nothing over here.
I don't trust that tone.
This is just my natural tone. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a slight variation.
A variation. I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing going on over here.
You're
I
more
would
suspicious.
I would let you know.
You're suspicious.
I'm sus.
Very, very sus.
I've been
I
playing too
call
much Among Us.
it's
So.
confirmed. Joe is going to be on Survivor 45.
If only, if only. I would have to get in shape like Carson though, because you know, seeing the pictures of him before was like it was crazy. I was like, oh geez, that's what he was like before he got in shape.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, I mean, you don't have to be a model to go out there.
Yeah.
So Joe, you are perfect the way you are. If you want to do that,
Oh, I would.
That's totally
I
fine.
would. I would do that just because I know the my weakest part is my physical game, and so if I can just at least be decent enough in my physical game to not worry about that, then I would be a lot more confident.
For me, my two biggest faults will be A, the cold, and B, managing my threat equity, because I'm
Mhm.
terrible at that. Just in
Yeah,
any
yeah.
game I
That's another thing I'm pretty bad at. I like playing hard, and if I ever see a moment to make like a really good move, even if it's like episode 3, I'm gonna make that really good move because I just can't not make a I just can't not do it.
yeah. People think I'm mischievous, and sometimes I give them reason to think that. So
Yeah.
I'm like Loki.
Yeah, I would definitely go out there as if I was being Joe the Angel and just play. I would almost be in like a Fabio level of just like I try to almost dumb down myself a little bit just so that way no one actually thinks that I know what I'm doing out there.
I don't want to be a copycat of Carson, but he definitely has the right kind of like strategy going out there.
Mhm.
Granted, I'm pretty sure they were like, huh, struggling actor, guy that's trying to work for NASA. Hello, Carson. I'm pretty sure that little decision was made like, huh. And it was like, Carson. It's like, all right. Because like obviously we fall under the same category, but
Mhm.
he's a bit
Yeah.
more impressive.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Getting back real quick. We talked now about the savvy a little bit. The sweat challenge. Brandon and Matthew. Are the ones to step up and do it. I think they were the obvious choices, at least from like me looking at it. From an outside perspective of being the two that I would assume would do this challenge. And this was probably the toughest sweat challenge we've seen. Like usually they're actually finishing like in half the time or less than
yeah.
half the time. This took them pretty much the full 4 hours to complete.
Yeah, because like it's not only endurance plays a big factor into it, but the thing is it's like it progressively gets harder as you go.
Mhm.
Like both of them were the two biggest guys. I mean, Kane is up there, but like, these were the
Yeah,
two like
Kane I think is like a big guy, but I don't necessarily look at him as like a big physical beast, like a competitor that's
I
gonna
wouldn't
win.
say physical beast, but I feel like he
Yeah.
does have some power.
Yeah, I think he's okay. He's like what you could consider like a mid-tier physical player.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But, like it is something where it's like something like that, especially when you're A on the timer and B, it's like it's something that progressively gets harder. Whereas when it was like digging for stuff, like that progressively gets easier because like, all right, you have less ground to cover because you keep eliminating some of it. So you're bound to find it. Or with the buckets and filling the water, it stays pretty consistent all the way through. So this one gets harder as you go along because not only do you have the extra weight, but you have the extra exhaustion that keeps added with the extra weight.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, when you're down to just like a few coconuts on each side, like that is a like you're literally having to do individual pulls just to move that bag of coconuts. It is, yeah, definitely a tougher challenge. And I think this is probably a big reason why Brandon ends up having his problem in the immunity challenge and having to basically sit out of the final parts of it is I think it drained a lot out of him. And Matthew had already injured himself from another thing, so he was on the sit out bench. So I
yeah,
do think that this actually hurt the tribe by them having to do this.
I mean, it's tricky because like we say, the puzzle is very, very tricky because you never know what kind of brain teaser it's going to be.
Yeah.
And, mathematical ones or riddle ones are easier than optical
Yeah.
or something like that. Like it really depends on the persons.
Yeah, and we've already talked on it that this is not necessarily the strategic puzzle tribe. This is the much more like we're gonna win through physical dominance.
Yeah.
So when they're in that mentality, they're not gonna risk an early game like this by doing the puzzle. So I 100% understand why they went with Sweat. I think that was the right decision for them because I think if they gave to the other tribe, I think both tribes end up not completing the challenge.
Yeah. Whereas, like, let's say if the Green Tribe came in second place, they had a bit more flexibility, or they could have been like, okay, we can have like, they can have like, the showmans do their little thing. It was like, all right, let's solve a puzzle together. That's how we met. Uh,
Yeah, they I
being
bet you Green Tribe probably has Danny and probably Josh as the sweat people. And then
yeah,
if you're looking at the savvy, uh
Franny and Matt,
yeah, Franny and Match are the savvy people. So
hashtag frat.
exactly. So yeah, they could have basically done it based off of whoever was the third place one. They could have actually like tried to look at that, try and be like, what's their weakest aspect. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think we pretty much went over everything in that regard.
mhm.
Or at least on my end, other than MVP, LVP, and our, what is it? Um, confessional counts, which
Yes.
you made it. We can touch on confessional counts a little bit because we touched on it throughout. And you said that Brandon had the most in a single debut episode.
Yeah, in the premieres, and maybe there's a one out there that I'm not seeing or anything, but Brandon got 14 confessionals, which, as what I'm believe, is the most premiere confessionals that any survivor has had. Carolyn from Worlds Apart had 13, and I believe that that was the record previously. So Brandon now has one extra more than that.
Hey, um, yeah, I think Brandon's going to be a very good person going forward. What were some of the other confessional counts?
Okay, so let's look at this. So in second place for confessionals, it is a tie between the Matts of Matthew and Matts. They both have 11. And then if you're looking at the next highest, we got Carson at 8. And then we got a few sevens with Lauren has 7, Sarah has 7, and Jam Jam has 7. Um, and then we got Carolyn with 6 and Kane with 6. And then you kind of start going down from there. Oh, yeah. So right now, out of confessional counts, those are probably the people to look forward to most out of content wise.
Yeah, I agree. Though sometimes it felt like, I don't know, Yam Yam just has such a big personality. It felt like we
Yeah,
saw so much more of him.
yeah.
Uh,
I was surprised too. He
Jam Jam,
was
my bad.
and I think that's why like all of his content wasn't like filler content. It was content that actually very much I think mattered to the story, to his character, to his personality, to what he was doing out there. Whereas there's some people out here like who even only have like two confessionals who I think their two confessionals were throwaway confessionals. Like Josh had like some stuff of just being like, yeah, we're doing great as a tribe, look at us go.
Yeah,
Like that doesn't do
content for
anything.
the sake of like, content. So they get some screen time at
Yeah,
least.
exactly. But what I'm basically saying is Jam Jam had
Meaningful
all
stuff,
7 confessionals felt like it wasn't that. It was very important, relevant information.
like pooping in the ocean.
Yeah, pooping in the ocean. That's what everyone wants to know about on Survivor.
Like people who watch the show are familiar because they've referenced it about the aqua dump, but it's still like,
Mhm.
that's your claim to fame.
Yeah.
uh, all right. So this is a very interesting one to talk about, the LVP and MVP of this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think some of the MVP candidates I'm thinking of also had some negatives that I could see potentially making cases for some of my who I'm actually going to play as my MVP. I could see making the case for them being an LVP.
Yeah. And I feel like because a lot of it was on because so much of it was on the, you know, Ratu tribe. And like that was a crazy tribal council. Crazy, but some could see it as bad gameplay or very risky and
Yeah.
luck. Because luck played a factor in some of those. Like,
Yeah.
especially since like Lauren's, it was like she got revealed basically and still went through with sacrificing her vote. Like, that takes a lot of guts and that's a very risky thing to do. Um,
Mhm.
it's because your name has been thrown out. You were like in the top three targets. But like, man,
Yeah.
uh, I'm still
Okay.
trying to figure it out. I'd say my MVP because they don't necessarily have any of those things is probably Carson. I feel like he is pretty good and set in his tribe, and I feel like unless it's like a kind of like a Woo scenario where it's like, oh, we're getting close to that merge,
Mhm.
we might have to trim, him because
Yeah.
he might be a big threat going in.
Yeah, I think Carson's probably in the best position in his tribe. I think that he can go with pretty much anyone. Like if he sees that that's the best case route, I think he can go literally with anyone on his tribe, and it would make sense for his gameplay and for whoever he's aligning with's gameplay. So I definitely think that's a good one. Um, I mean, but I am going to choose someone from the Ratu tribe because they did go to tribal council.
Yeah,
I mean, my two options really are Brandon or Matthew. Brandon for his idol play and being pretty much the having the most confessionals, being the center of a lot of the attention. Um, and but the only reason I'm not choosing Brandon is because he was such a like a, a big physical threat like him should not be targeted this early, and the fact that that is
yeah,
happening makes me actually not choose him. So I'm going to choose Matthew as my MVP. Um, I think Matthew did have a very solid episode. I think he is very much in with a lot of the people. And I think we might see him use his arm injury actually to benefit him in this game, similar to how Tyson used it in Blood versus Water. By actually, it's going to lower his threat level a little bit. So, I think that there's a few other people that are going to get taken out before him on this tribe as well. So, I don't think he's necessarily going to be taken out just because he has an injury right now. Um, yeah, I think him using his shot in the dark
Joe.
in a
Oh,
defensive way, I think was actually a very good move that's gonna benefit him, regardless of if he even looked at it that way. I think that that's what he's gonna benefit from at the end of the day.
all right, all right. Clearly my boat theory was wrong, so he
Yeah,
has a good shot now.
yeah,
Um, LVP. I'm going with Love because I don't necessarily think I think he's definitely going to make the merge, but you can't lose two votes for two of your tribal councils
yeah,
and say that you had a really strong first episode. And Maddie was just like a Supreme Leader Snoke kind of like plot twist that was like, oh crap, that just kind of happened. Um, I use that expression a lot. Uh, but I am going to give it with Love, Matt Blankenship, because like you lost two votes. And like I know like you had the option and you were forced to pull one out no matter what. So like your odds of losing your vote was 2 and 3 in the beginning.
mhm,
But because he lost two, and I really don't feel like giving it to anyone else, because I feel like Carolyn's going to make this list later on, and she didn't necessarily do anything wrong this episode.
mhm,
She did take off her pants. And well, I understand because sometimes to bend more as someone who wears tight pants every so often, maybe
mhm.
you do need that little extra flexibility. But I don't necessarily fault her for the loss of that one, or she didn't do anything like wrong this episode per
Yeah,
se.
yeah. I don't like giving an LVP just because someone had a bad challenge outing, also, because
Yeah,
everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes, not being able to do one challenge doesn't mean that that's gonna change the course of their game. Um,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to actually agree with you. I'm also going to give it to Matt, because the fact that this tribe, I think, is only going to go a few times, or if at all, in pre-merge, those votes are going to matter. And if he has to then also lose his votes at the beginning of the merge, that's going to be a huge target for him also at that point. And if that tribe is the majority alliance or like the majority tribe, that tribe is more likely to get people targeted. So I actually think that he could be in some trouble around that merge area if he's still in the game.
Definitely, definitely. Um, I guess the very last thing we can talk about, because we saw what the Orange Tribe did, the birdcage and whatnot, and we know that there is, because it's since it is a public thing, and that tribe knows about, you know, the fake idol that's within it, how it
Mhm.
might play out on the other two tribes, because like, different people, so it could happen different ways.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I would say I'm very interested to see how things might play and who might find the key and or who finds the key the first time around,
Yeah.
and how that all pans out.
Yeah, exactly. Another one last little thing. Since Brandon has 14 confessionals, that means he has more confessionals than Heather from Survivor 41 in her entire season of being on
Damn.
the he's already beaten her confessional count.
Wow. I mean, hey, he already has the record. Which means with that also said, I think Brandon is going to be around for a while. I think
Yeah.
he's definitely one of the bigger, I don't want to say contestants in a sense, but I also want to say one of the bigger personalities coming out here.
Mhm.
Like, him being a pretty, big guy, him having the NFL background, as
Mhm.
well as like just like his mentality and whatnot. And also someone that gives us all at every challenge. I feel like he is definitely someone that's going to stick around for a while, despite almost getting voted out the very first episode.
Yeah, if I had to say where I think he's going right now, it's going to be probably like jury member number 3 or 4, somewhere around there is where I'm guessing is where he's going to go out. So what is that like? That's going to be like episode 9 or 10
Yeah,
of him being out there. So yeah, that seems pretty fair, I think.
yeah, yeah. Overall, despite it made for good TV with the Bruce thing, but like it is so bad because that is an actual human being. Like, I can watch horror movies where people get butchered and stuff like that, and like, yeah, I may cry and stuff, but you feel bad when it's real people and like they're in these dangerous situations that are, I don't want to say a nature to the game because fundamentally speaking, we're not supposed to have medevacs and stuff like that. They just happen sometimes.
Mhm.
But I'd say overall, this was a really great episode.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agreed.
so like I'm really excited for this season. Stay tuned because in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be at another Bryce and Wendell Presents party. And
Nice,
I'm
nice.
excited
We'll
to
see
see.
if there'll be any more Survivor players that you'll be able to get some footage of.
Yeah, Survivor players, or I'm pretty sure since this is a smaller one, mm, uh, probably the ones that are out in LA that will most likely return.
Mhm.
So we'll see. Or not just Survivor, but also Big Brother, Amazing Race,
Yeah,
like all of those peeps.
all the CBS reality, or just all overall reality shows.
Yeah. Oh, also, guys, for those who have Paramount Plus, which if you're watching our channel, I would be surprised if you didn't, TBH. Because but like if you know, be keep an eye out for the Challenge World, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Challenge World Cup or Tour or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Because that is starting on March 8th. And of course, we have Survivor alumni in there, Danny being right front and center in that poster they have. I mean, like, I hope he does well, obviously. He's
Yeah,
one of my favorite new school contestants or modern contestants.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think he's one of the best sports athletes to go on Survivor, like in terms of his overall social, strategic, and physical prowess. I think he's,
yeah,
like a lot of them usually are lacking on at least one or two of those.
and not only that, because we'll talk a little bit about that season. He was also someone who won that season because the last puzzle or the last obstacle before the hike to the top
Mhm.
was solving a Sudoku puzzle. So like he also has brains, and Sudoku is hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
and
like
we're also going to get Ben Drebergen in, and he got medevaced before the final challenge,
yeah,
and he knew how to play Sudoku. Everyone else like didn't really know how to play Sudoku, and that's actually what stumped them was they just didn't really know the rules of how Sudoku is played, and so they're now being told this is how to play Sudoku. But Ben and Danny were like some of the only people who really knew Sudoku for the guys. And
yeah.
so, since Ben wasn't there, Danny got kind of the free win there. But there's a good chance Ben could have won had he not injured himself like a day or two before.
Not only that, there's just a lot of what ifs as well because like how that one played out as well because he was absent and it was lopsided between the males and females. That also changes up who was partnered with who for which leg.
Yep.
And like, we all know that that led to an elimination because like one woman had to solo each one and someone didn't do the challenge because they thought, oh, well, I just come in last place in that challenge, but they technically quit.
Yeah, exactly. If they had another person, they could have at least slept in shifts and been able to do it. So there's a chance that also Angela is would have kept playing the game.
Yeah, so it is a big thing. And like, he had a decent enough story. I did like him and Sarah as like a duo.
Mhm.
So like, I'm excited to see that dynamic back. He was
Yeah,
at
it's
the
weird though that in my opinion that they're bringing a bunch of other challenge players who are just challenge and didn't really win their way in, and there's all these people who did win their way in. It feels weird
yeah,
that there's like a mixture, like they're doing half and half.
I was a little surprised when I saw that. But at the same time, I'm like, I guess like in the sense the winners guaranteed their spot there,
Yeah.
whereas the other two were like casting like them and they didn't quit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess I'm even okay with like Ben coming back because he didn't win. Like I'm fine with some of the people who were in these ones that didn't win, but they were like big presences on the seasons. But it's weird now that people who weren't even like competing for a chance to do this are now in it, in this thing that's supposed to be the world like cup version of the challenge, basically. And
well,
they
I know
kind of
like
just are
the
in now.
challenge. I know like the challenge, their casts are pretty big.
Yeah.
And when they said world championships, now this is on me for not Googling, like, oh, well, where else is the challenge, like, broadcast and whatnot. Because,
Mhm.
like, obviously we know that Survivor has so many, variations throughout the world. Big Brother was actually not an American thing.
Mhm.
To those who don't know that, it was European, I believe, and then
Yeah.
like came over here to the States. And then, so like, I didn't know how many international challenges there were. Um, so yeah, I didn't know. So like, I didn't know how big the pool was. I thought, oh, it must be big enough where they can get two from each, country.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm not sure. Wish Tyson would have been selected. I thought Tyson was a standout of the Challenge USA. But it did seem like he really hated how production was handling things. And he kind of made it pretty public. So I wonder if that maybe, made them not want to bring Tyson back, or if Tyson didn't want to come back because of it. I'm not sure.
that usually, as someone in show business, I mean, like, you talk against production. That's not always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly. Um, but yeah, watch the new season of Challenge, and I hope everyone's also going to keep enjoying this new season. I think we're off to an interesting start. I wonder who's going to get injured next.
It's so far it's 3 for 3 of like people getting challenged or people getting hurt each day. So
Yep.
hopefully
Yeah,
they
I
make
did
it seem
you
like there's
catch by the way when Kane said, "I wonder who's going to get injured on day 3."
well because it was one
Sure
after
enough,
the other.
someone does get injured on day 3.
Um, I don't know if it was just all this one episode and that was just kind of like the teaser and like it's all there. But hopefully there isn't any medevacs. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't just based on the promo, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this episode. And we will see you next week, hopefully on a regular time. But I am expected to be in another snowstorm here, so hopefully I have power. But yeah, if not, we'll have to wait another few days. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one.
Yeah. All right, guys. Stay safe. And yeah, keep watching.
Yep.
Peace.
Adios.